Have you ever been sitting on a commercial flight, maybe looking out the window, and you just kind of stop and think, how is this giant metal tube just effortlessly soaring through the sky? The person in charge of that whole miracle, the pilot, well, they have this incredible weight of responsibility on their shoulders. It's one of those jobs where there is zero room for error.
So that really begs the question, right? How do we make sure that the person in the cockpit is ready for literally anything? I mean, it's so much more than just knowing how to steer the plane. It's about mastering an incredibly complex system, often under some serious pressure.
Okay, so let's get into it. The answer, it turns out, comes from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. They don't leave anything to chance. They've created the actual official rulebook for what it takes to earn a pilot certificate.
And that rulebook is called the Airman Certification Standards, or ACS for short. You should think of it as the ultimate final exam blueprint. It lays out, in meticulous detail, every single thing a pilot applicant has to know, what they need to consider, and what they must be able to do to get certified.
So in this explainer, we're going to tear this amazing document down. We're going to look at the 3 pillars of safety it's all built on, the crazy intense prep work that happens before the flight, the skills needed to master the aircraft in the air, how pilots train for the absolute worst-case scenarios, and finally, what it really means to be the pilot in command.
All right, let's start with the core idea here. The ACS is not just some simple checklist of things to do. No way. It's built on this integrated approach to safety that combines different but totally critical areas of expertise.
And this right here illustrates those 3 pillars perfectly. First, you've got aeronautical knowledge. That's the book smarts. Second is risk management. This is the constant, ongoing process of seeing, thinking about, and dealing with risk. And third, you have flight proficiency, the actual hands-on flying skills. A certified pilot isn't just good at one of these. They have to be a master of all 3, working together all the time.
Now, here's something that might surprise you. A huge part of the pilot's test happens before the plane even moves an inch. The very first major section of the ACS is all about pre-flight prep, and believe me, it is exhaustive.
I mean, we're talking about a level of detail that is just staggering. A pilot has to show they have a deep, practical understanding of the plane's condition, all its complex systems, how to plan a cross-country flight, and, as we're about to see, even their own body.
So let's just take one tiny little piece of that pre-flight puzzle, weather. This gives you an idea of the detail we're talking about. A pilot can't just glance at the weather app on their phone. Nope. They have to know how to read and interpret a whole bunch of different reports, like METARs for what's happening right now, TAFs for what's going to happen, and SIGMETs, which are basically giant red flags for seriously dangerous weather. They have to build a complete picture of the atmosphere in their head.
And get this, the plane isn't the only machine being checked out. The ACS has a whole section on what they call human factors. Pilots are literally tested on how well they understand their own bodies. They have to know the signs of oxygen starvation, or hypoxia, how your brain can get tricked when you can't see the horizon, and how things like stress, fatigue, or even just a simple allergy pill can affect their ability to fly safely.
Okay, so let's move into the sky. This is where all that knowledge gets put into practice. The flight portion of the test is where proficiency is proven, with a huge emphasis on absolute precision and control in all sorts of different conditions.
You might think a takeoff is just a takeoff, right? Well, not exactly. A pilot has to prove they've mastered different types for different situations. A short field takeoff, for example, is all about maximum performance, getting the plane airborne and climbing as steeply as possible to clear something like a line of trees. But a soft field takeoff from a grass strip, that's a totally different skill, all about smoothly getting the plane's weight off the wheels and onto the wings without digging in or getting stuck.
Then we get into the really advanced maneuvers. First up, the chandelle. This is a beautiful, sweeping, climbing 180-degree turn where the pilot has to finish right on the edge of a stall. It's a huge test of managing the plane's energy and being super precise. It's the kind of skill you'd need if you had to reverse course in a tight spot, like a narrow canyon.
And then there are 8s on pylons. This one looks kind of graceful from the ground, but it is incredibly difficult to do right. The pilot has to fly a perfect figure 8 around 2 points on the ground, all while holding a very specific altitude that changes with the wind and the plane speed. It's a massive test of multitasking and making tiny, constant corrections.
And maybe, just maybe, the ultimate test of pure stick and rudder skill is this one, the power-off 180-degree accuracy landing. At a specific point downwind of the runway,
The pilot pulls the engine power to idle. The plane is now a glider. They get one shot, and only one shot, to land on a precise spot on the runway. It's the perfect simulation of an engine failure, proving they can handle the absolute worst-case scenario. There are no go-arounds.
And that brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most critical part of this entire process: emergency operations. This is where pilots are tested on their ability to handle the kind of flight that everybody hopes they never, ever have to experience.
This quote from the ACS document itself really just says it all. The whole point of this entire thing is to make sure a pilot has the knowledge, the risk management, and the skill to handle the huge responsibilities they're being given, especially when things go sideways.
And the situations they're tested on are, well, they're pretty specific and pretty scary. A rapid emergency descent, a total systems failure, an engine quitting just as you're taking off. For every one of these, they have to demonstrate calm, deliberate, and correct procedures in scenarios that would be absolutely terrifying for real.
And the level of precision they have to maintain, even during these advanced maneuvers, is just razor thin. So get this. During a steep turn, banked over at 50 degrees, a pilot has to hold their altitude within plus or minus just 100 feet. That's about the height of a 6-story building, all while G-forces are pushing you down into your seat. It is an incredible display of skill.
So, when you put all of this together, what does the Airman certification standard actually create? It's about so much more than just getting a piece of paper that says you can fly.
And this is really the key takeaway. The whole purpose of the ACS is to create a true pilot in command. Not just a machine operator who knows which buttons to push, but a genuine decision maker who can combine knowledge, manage risk, and fly the plane with skill, all at the same time.
At the end of the day, it's a test of judgment, a test of discipline under extreme pressure, and a test of precision when it counts the most. Every single line, every single task in this document is there for one reason, and one reason only: to keep passengers safe.
Think about it like this. The next time you're on a flight and you hit a patch of turbulence, you can rest easy knowing the person up front was tested not just on the physical skill of flying through it, but on the deep meteorological knowledge to understand why it's happening and the risk management ability to have planned for it long before you ever took off.
And that kind of leaves you with one final thought. Pilots are trained for the flight that might happen, not just the one on the flight plan. So what does that way of thinking, that philosophy of preparing for the unexpected, tell us about what it really means to be an expert in any field?